Sarah, do you know what the meaning of the word density is?
Not really.
Well, haven't you called somebody dense?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, what did you have in mind when you called the person dense? Thick-headed? Okay. Density has something to do with thickness. You're right. As a matter of fact, its correct definition is mass per unit volume. But let us explain the idea, I think, more quickly by cutting that piece of potato in half.
Okay.
And then I'd like you to put them into one piece into each of those glasses of liquid. Okay?
Well, here it goes into the sort of clear one.
That's plain water. Okay? And the potato sinks, right?
Yeah.
Now here's sugar water.
It floated to the top.
Okay. Now, can you tell which liquid is the most dense?
Well, as a wild guess, I think it was this one.
Why wild guess?
Well,
you don't know the idea of buoyancy, where something floats based on the idea that it displaces its equal volume and so forth. For our purposes now, just realize that the denser the liquid is, the more things will float on it. Okay?
Okay.
Because we're going to use the idea of the density of liquids to identify plastics. Okay? So you want to move those glasses out of the way, put them over there on the shelf.
Okay.
And I've collected a bunch of plastics that are sort of common. In fact, this cover that you were cutting the potato on, you recognize that, don't you?
Yeah. It's
What
just
is it?
a lid.
Hmm?
It's just a lid that's flexible and it's semi-clear.
Okay, that's what I want you to do. Look at these common plastics and identify for me their characteristics, because chemists, when they make the plastics, can give them certain characteristics depending on how they put them together. So that's flexible and transparent.
Yeah.
Okay, how about this one?
Well, it's light, inexpensive, and it's strong enough to last.
Why do you say
while you're
inexpensive?
eating. Well, you can buy a whole package of them at the
Right.
store just for a couple
Well, the
of
point is
bucks.
that you're going to throw it away, right? You don't
Yeah.
bother to clean it. Okay. How about this one?
Well, it's slippery,
Right.
and
And?
it's aquapaint.
Yeah, you can't see through it, so obviously
Yeah.
if you wanted to, right. This one?
This one has to be strong because pressure will be put onto it.
Yeah, it's a gear, right?
Yeah.
And that one?
And this has to allow water to pass through it without
Right.
dissolving.
Right. And all kinds of liquids
Yeah,
that
it
go
has to be
through
strong.
it. And it has to be strong too, right? Okay. So those are some of the ideas, at least, so that you get the idea that the plastics that we use in our everyday life have all kinds of characteristics. So they can't be really used to identify them. Scientists, when they want to identify a plastic, use the idea of their density. And see here I have a chart.
Low density,
Teflon, right?
Medium density, nylon.
Right.
High density, PVC.
Polyvinyl chloride. And here are samples of those three plastics right here. So you have to identify which is which. And how are you going to do it?
By the density of the water.
Yeah, by the density of the liquid. It's not water. Okay. So I will put a sample of each one into that tall test tube over there. What would you say the density of that liquid is?
Very low.
Yeah, because everything is sinking in it. How about this one?
I would say high.
High density, right. So this one is now sort of in the middle, and that's the one you're going to use to identify these plastics. First, I'll take this white one and put it in.
It's just staying at the top.
Yeah, so?
It's low density,
And
Teflon.
is Teflon, right. Now I'll take this darker piece.
Sunk to the bottom, so it must be high
Density, and
yeah.
it's
PVC.
So what's left?
The nylon.
And it's,
Medium density.
so it ought to give someplace between the two, right?
Yes.
There you go. So now you've identified plastics in the same way chemists would do it, by their density. Congratulations, you've identified each one. Okay, here's another superstar of the microscopic world.
Oh.
That, see up near the top there's a stalk, there's a little sort of string coming out.
Oh,
so I'm going to focus down that string so that you can see what's at the other end. And
Oh,
there it
it's
is.
Plant.
You'd think it was a plant because it's anchored, right? However, it gets its food by material less. In fact, watch. See how the stuff goes zooming by and being pulled in?
Oh, it's...
Okay. Now,
like
right at the
sucked
very tip are little hairs. Can you see them?
Oh, yeah, right over there.
Right in there, right. And they're waving back and forth, creating a vortex or a whirlpool that pulls in food from the outside world into it, and some of it goes in through that opening at the top. This is one of the reasons why it's called, I think, a Vorticella.
Because of vortex?
Because of making a vortex, yes. Now I'll change focus just a little bit. Now see, it didn't like that big one that went by, but
So
it's still captured. It's
go through the current.
It's captured by the current, you see, by the vortex, and pulled into it. So I think one of the reasons why it's very often studied by beginning biology students is because it's anchored, see, to something, and so therefore it doesn't go swimming away. So, and
it's easy to see.
Yeah. And when in it are all the things that are in a cell, the nucleus and all that kind of stuff, and as the food is drawn into it, it then extracts when it can and then sends out the food out through the same opening.
Oh.
So there is another
really
famous pond animal called a Vorticella.
Vorticella.
Really goes, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's neat.
Yeah.
How'd you make it?
Well, as you saw, it was made out of a paper plate, and you can make 3 or 4 of them, put various designs on them. In fact, let's stop that for a minute so you can see. Here is what you need. Have you got this at home?
Yes.
What is it?
Paper plate, pencil, grommet, spool, and another grommet.
Right. That's all you need. In fact, let me start it for you. Take the spool, put it on the pencil. No, just take the spool up and put it on the pencil, because I put a hole through the 3 or 4 paper plates, and it's kind of tough to get through, so let me do it for you. There, okay. Now put the other grommet on the bottom. Very good. Now remember, there's 3 or 4 paper plates, okay? And when you spin it, if you're going to do it at home, you should put a newspaper or papers down here or something, because you're going to make a mark with the pencil. Okay, give yours a spin. Aha! Wobbles just a little bit because I was a little off center, but it's kind of a nice effect. Now, why does it spin like that?
Well, because the paper plate puts more weight on the bottom, so it doesn't flop around.
Well, you notice the paper plate is upside down, trying to get weight down below. That's one of the things. Another thing is illustrated by this.
I've been on a ride like that.
Yeah, you've seen something like this at the rides, haven't you? And they spin it. So put one hand up here and give it a spin down below. Watch what happens to all the little yellow circles. Besides almost hitting you in the face, what are they doing?
Well, they're turning around.
Yes. In fact, think of it this way. Each one would like to continue in a straight line, but they can't because they're held by this ribbon. So each one is pulling out in that, in an opposite direction. So that's what gives it stability, because each one is pulling in a different direction like that. That's one of the effects. The other effect is a gyroscopic effect. Have you ever played with a gyroscope?
Yeah.
Yeah? Well, you know how you spin them and they sort of stay suspended? Here's a gyroscope made out of a record. So here, put your finger in there. Okay. Now I'm going to give it a push, but not spin it. I'm just going to give it a push. Now you watch what happens. See how it flops around?
Yeah.
Okay. Now I'll give it a spin, and you wave it back and forth like a pendulum.
Oh, yeah. That's neat.
See how it stays in the same plane? Yeah, that's because of the gyroscopic effect. Wait, I'll give it another spin. See if you can swing it all around your head. Okay? Great. Okay, so those 2 effects, the centrifugal force and the gyroscopic effect, is what makes a top work. And do you think you can make now one of your own on your own? What do you need?
You need a pencil, paper plate, spool, grommet.
And you can use rubber bands in place of that, okay? Yeah. Then put a piece of paper down on the table. Go ahead, give it a spin. You're a good spinner.
Thank you.
That sound is being produced by a thirsty plant. Dr. Melvin Tyree of the University of Vermont developed the technique working with colleagues at the Agricultural Research Service in Fort Collins, Colorado. They were doing basic research into how plants transport water from their roots up their stems. In some plants, like sequoia trees, water is forced up through tubes as high as 100 meters due to tremendous suction pressure. The process occurs in all plants, including corn. When water within the plant is critically low, enormous tensions are created in the columns of water in the stalk. At such high tensions, the water column is literally torn apart. A sensing device detects the high-frequency sound of the water column breaking up, and after processing, a sound is produced that's within the range of human hearing. The level of soil moisture and the rate at which a plant loses water are being recorded at the same time to see if a farmer could know when to water his crops by listening to his thirsty plants. Okay, what does it read now, Terry?
120 and going off the scale.
Yeah, it's going off the scale. That's because you're measuring the iron and it's too hot for the thermometer. Well, now quickly put the probe over by the light bulb and check its temperature. What happens to the scale?
Well, it's
needle
coming back.
Yeah.
Now it's coming onto the scale.
Now it's coming on. So it's, in other words, it's slowly dropping as it cools off. So which is hotter, the iron or the light bulb?
The iron.
Okay. Now, maybe that, and I'd like you to put your hand like this in between the two sheets of glass, one in front of the iron and the other in front of the light bulb. What do you feel?
I feel the heat from the light and nothing from the iron. But how is that? When we read it off the scale, then the iron was hotter than the light.
Right. Now that's because of a thing called a greenhouse effect. You know what a greenhouse is?
Yes.
What?
It's a big kind of house, but very long, that's made out of glass. And you plant plants in it.
Okay. Well, it can be various lengths. Some of them are short, too. But the important thing is made of glass, and you plant plants in it because the light from the sun can go through the glass because it's a relatively short wavelength. That's one of the definitions of light, that it's a shorter wavelength. Then when it hits the plants on the inside, it's changed to heat, and then it can't go back through the glass because then it's a long wavelength, so that heats up the greenhouse. Why the plants grow very well. And that's the same thing that's happening right here. Now see that piece of cardboard? Okay, put it here between the two sheets of glass so we can begin to get the temperature on each side of the piece of cardboard. See, there's a probe on this side facing the iron,
and
another probe on that side facing the light. Yeah. Because, have you heard about the greenhouse effect as far as the atmosphere is concerned?
No.
Well, the atmosphere all around the Earth acts somewhat like the glass does, in that the light from the sun can go through it, but then when it's changed to heat, some of the heat is radiated back into space, and that keeps the Earth at the temperature that it is. But man is creating certain chemicals that go up into the atmosphere and change it so that the long heat waves can't get through. So it's acting something like the glass. And that means that it's possible that the Earth would get hotter because the heat waves would be trapped. So that's why they call it the greenhouse effect. And scientists are trying to do something about that by suggesting that man not make those chemicals that go up into the air.
And that's why when I put my hand here, I felt the heat from the light, because it can travel through. And when I didn't feel any heat from the iron because it can't travel through.
Right, can't travel through. And now let's check the temperature on each side. You remember I told you about the scale over there. Switch the knob way on the right to the lower scale, way on the right, down one notch, okay? And now turn it to one so it points to the light. And now you're reading the top of the bottom scale.
Okay.
So what does it read?
It reads about 34.
34 degrees? Okay. Now I want you to switch it over to the iron. But before you do that, predict. Is it going to go up, going to go down, or going to be the same?
It's going to go down.
According to the greenhouse effect.
Yeah.
Okay, try it.
Okay.
Yeah, it went down. How many degrees?
It went about 6 degrees
about
down.
6 degrees difference here. And if we left it here longer, it might even be a greater degree difference because of a greenhouse effect, which is what?
Which is the light can come through and down onto the plant, but it can't come out.
Because of the longer wavelength.
Yeah.
Very good. You did a good job. Good measurements, too.
Thanks.
This is not a photograph of an actual mountain. The images were created by a computer using a recently developed kind of mathematics called fractal geometry. The American Institute of Physics recorded these pictures, which were produced by taking a basic shape, for example a triangle, and repeating it many times with small variations. The computer artist can develop the basic patterns into abstract designs of stunning complexity and beauty, or create intricate but nevertheless realistic pictures. Dr. Benoit Mandelbrot of Harvard University and the IBM Corporation called the new geometry fractal because it's based on fractions of a dimension. The new math may help explain the many complex, seemingly random patterns in nature. The genetic code in the seed of a tree may contain a fractal formula that gives rise to the arrangement of the tree's branches. A tool for exploring complex patterns, the new branch of mathematics called fractal geometry.
Oh, this stuff is gross. It's slimy and all gooey and all that.
Yeah, right. You can see why it's called slime. Right. It's also called a polymer.
What's a polymer, Mr. Wizard?
Well, a polymer is, poly stands for many, and the mer part stands for molecules. So many molecules linked together to give a polymer. And in fact, many of the plastics that you use in everyday life are polymers. The chemists have linked many molecules together. In fact, you're going to do that right now. Put that down over there.
Okay, sure.
And here are two chemicals in glasses. Mix them together.
Okay.
Just pour one into the other.
Okay, I'll pour this here.
Okay, now here's a stirring rod. Stir it up.
Okay. You can see it's getting thicker every time I stir it up.
Well, that's because the molecules that were once separated are now coming together and beginning to form those bonds and making longer molecules. Okay, dump it right out.
Okay.
There.
Oh.
Go ahead, pick it up, yeah.
Okay. Oh, this stuff is even slimier than the first one.
That's because it has a lot of the water left behind.
Oh.
So now you've taken chemicals that were sort of individual molecules like this, these beads, you see, and when you mix them together, they formed
a linked chain.
Sort of chains. So that's what you're going to do every time you make a polymer. Here, do you want to wipe your hands off with this towel? Because now we're going to take the chains like this and break them apart.
But how could you do that? Because it's already together.
Yes, well, you're going to do that with another chemical. And here it is in that Petri dish right here. It's acetone, which is used as nail polish remover. So here's the polymer cup called styrofoam. Punch a hole in the bottom. That's to let some of the acetone in. Now turn it upside down and put it there in the acetone.
Okay.
Watch what happens.
Oh, it's starting to bubble and that. And it's eating the cup away.
Well, it seems like it's eating the cup away, like an acid, right? But it's not. It's really just dissolving some of the bonds of the polymer and letting out some of the air that was trapped, because you know that's a good insulator, right?
Hey, that's neat. First we put it together, and now we're taking it apart.
Right. So that's what's left of the polymer known as styrofoam when it was in a cup.
Oh, now it's slimy now.
Here. The shark. Few animals generate so much fear in so many people. Scientists who study sharks treat them with the same respect do any large, potentially dangerous wild animal. Dr. Peter Gruber of the University of Miami has been studying sharks for more than 30 years. To find out more about the movement of lemon sharks, Dr. Gruber and his students bury receivers along the bottom of the lagoon. When they capture a shark, they put a towel in its mouth to keep it from biting. A small transmitter is implanted in the shark's body without harming it. Each transmitter sends out a different signal so movements of individual sharks can be monitored. The shark is released. As it swims in the lagoon, signals from its implanted transmitter will be picked up by the buried receivers. Once a month, the receivers are recovered from the lagoon. On board their mother ship, information from each receiver is fed into a computer, which determines where each shark was and how fast it was swimming every 15 minutes during a 5-day period. There is much to be learned about the movements of that fascinating marine animal, the shark. Okay, take the ordinary bobby pins and sort of spread them apart a little bit.
Why are we spreading them apart?
Well, you'll see, because you are going to be a metallurgist and treat them.
Treat them how?
Well, these two have been treated, and try bending them.
They're different colors.
Yeah, try bending it.
It broke.
Right, now try the other one.
This one's all flexible, it won't break.
Okay. That's the way you're going to treat these ordinary bobby pins, by putting them in a flame, and it depends on the speed with which you let them cool, whether they are breakable or whether they are not breakable. When you heat the first bobby pin, bring it into the flame here like this, and then pull it out slowly so that it has a chance to cool
down
quickly.
slowly?
That means the molecules will have a chance to line up, and that will make them flexible.
Okay.
Then we're going to take the other one and put it in the flame here, and I'll put it right over the water, and when you get the middle part hot, put it right into the water to stop the molecular action quickly.
And that'll be the one that breaks.
Right. And metallurgists do this when they want to make the metal real hard. They quench it real quickly, because then it's used for things like nails and cutlery and things like that. Right. The other one is for like wires. Okay? So are you ready? So take the one bobby pin. This one you're going to anneal. You're going to let it cool slowly.
It's called annealing?
Annealing, right.
Okay.
Now the hottest part of the flame is right out about there.
Okay.
And all you have to do is worry about the center part, because that's what we're going to break. There you go.
Oh, yeah.
Slowly let it cool.
It's getting lighter and later and later. There.
Okay, now put that one down over there. Now try this one. You're going to plunge into the water as soon as you get it nice and red hot.
Just gets pure red.
There you go. Okay. Now put that one over there next to it. Now, according to the theory...
This one will break and that one will be
Okay,
flexible.
try it. See if that one breaks.
It did.
Sure did. And that one?
And this one better not break.
See,
There, little chips are breaking
little chips come
off.
up. That's because we oxidized some of the surface, and by heating it like that. So now you are a metallurgist, even though it's only with bobby pins.
Yeah.
See the water vapor coming out of here?
Yeah, whoa.
Now, some people think that's steam, but it's not really. Steam is invisible. In fact, the only steam is right there and inside this tube, except for that little water bubbling up and down.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's water boiling at the bottom of the flask that fills the entire flask with steam all the way down to the opening of the tube down below.
Whoa.
Now, Christina, you know what happens when water changes to steam? What?
Yeah, well, when there's in water, there's crowded molecules, but
all
when it
together,
turns
yeah.
into steam, they're separated.
They fly apart, right. So that means that if we condense that steam back to water again, it will take up much less space. And that's what I'm going to do when I turn off the heat and turn this flask upside down and put that glass down at the bottom of this blue liquid.
Whoa.
Okay, you watch what happens.
Okay. Whoa! Nothing's happening.
Well, just wait a minute. Watch the little tube inside the flask.
Whoa,
Here it comes.
It's coming up.
Yes.
It's a water fountain.
Yes, it's a steam fountain, really, because the outside air pressure is pushing down here on that blue liquid and helping to force the water up into the tube to fill the partial vacuum that occurs when we change the steam back to water again. Whoa. And you can see why I had you wear safety glasses.
Yeah,
because it could be kind of dangerous. Anyway, there is a nice blue steam fountain.